Hello everyone, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank for Comics of the Week, and today we're going to start off with the Immortal Hulk, issue number 4. So, we meet Walter Lankowski, along with our new friend Alex McGee, and on their way to, find out where the Hulk was last, Walter sort of gives us a little rundown as to exactly how he knows Bruce Banner. So it turns out they went to college together. Walter was more for the athletics, more for football, but he also dabbled a bit in science, and that's sort of how he and Bruce sort of connected over their interest in gamma radiation. And, one day, Walter finds out about what happened to Bruce, and he decides to just totally drop sports and go full on to figuring out exactly what happened to Bruce. He joins up with the government, and the Canadian government wants to sort of create a deterrent. It's sort of their own Hulk, and they sort of do the experiment with gamma radiation and whatnot, and he becomes Tonrock, or the Sasquatch, effectively. And the difference between Bruce and Walter is Bruce has a lot of demons. He has a lot of unresolved issues, which sort of leads to his temper. Walter doesn't have that. He's a laid-back guy. So one day the experiment goes through. He, turns into Tonrock or Sasquatch, whatever he is. Then he runs off and he sees a green door. And that green door allows him to be possessed by the actual Tonrock, an old deity. And for the longest time, Tonrock was sort of battling for control against Walter. But now Walter says, it's all good, I'm in control now. And it sort of implies this has sort of been how he's been able to function, how he was able to be a member of Alpha Flight, that, he had control over this being. So while they go to a bar to sort of find out if Bruce Banner, was there, they think he was because he recently, as the Hulk, did some shenanigans. And before they can find out more, there's a fight breaking out at the bar, and Walter goes up to stop it, and he's stabbed in the back. And so they take him to the hospital, and as Alex is waiting to see what's going to happen, Bruce Banner shows up. And Bruce says, interestingly enough, that the reason he was able to find them was because of Walter's gamma signature. The Hulk can sense it, and the Hulk is sort of, he can talk to Bruce as the day goes on. Meanwhile, as Walter's being, worked on, they notice they're starting to lose him. And that's when Bruce talks about, if they lose him, what's going to happen is the other one might wake up, especially as it gets darker. His friend is the same as mine, that, the closer he gets tonight, the stronger he gets. So we probably should evacuate the building. And as they lose Walter, then Tonrock wakes up. And that's how the comic ends. So Immortal Hulk number 4, it might be the weakest so far. Everything else was... I still love the first one because it has this really great horror feel to it that I don't think the other issues have really tried to... have been able to live up to. Issue 2, I think, was. Issue 3 sort of did it from the different story perspective. Here, it's just sort of introducing a new player. There is something interesting, though. Alex sort of has a flashback in the comic to when she was a little girl and she first saw the Hulk. And it might imply that Hulk may have killed her father, but we're not entirely sure. Overall, this was another solid issue in this book. I'm really looking forward to reading more. Next up is Death of the Inhumans, issue 2. So this comic picks up pretty much right where we left off. They're on New Attilan, and Black Bolt is sort of, surveying all the damage done, all the Inhumans that have been killed by the Kree, by Vox. And he's sort of resolved his decision now. So he sends Karnak to meet with a delegation, and effectively we just sort of find out what happened to the old delegation on Hala. That this new delegation was a group of Kree explorers, and when they found out what happened to Hala, they came down to sort of help rebuild, help everything better. And then Karnak meets Vox, and Karnak's first response is to attack Vox. And Karnak, his ability is he can sense the weakness in anything, and it makes him a very dangerous opponent because the Vox doesn't care. Vox instantly just goes in, stabs Karnak. Karnak's relatively out of the picture, but then Karnak says he's here to deliver a message from Black Bolt, and everyone thinks it's his surrender. Instead, the message is Black Bolt himself going around giving apparently a speech, and it's presumably a speech he was working on. But I also think at the same time, the speech is actually the name of the Inhumans that had been killed. Every single Inhuman that Vox has killed, every single human the Kree have killed. And then his last word is actually his decision. The Kree gave him two choices, join or die. His response, and the only way Black Bolt can, is die as he decimates the Kree forces, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And Jesse's about to fight Vox, and I'm like, oh, it's about to happen, it's about to happen. Thor and Oakenshield versus Azog the Defiler. Vox takes Karnak, holds a knife to his throat, and Black Bolt says, take me instead. And I think what Black Bolt and Karnak expected was that Black Bolt and Karnak would switch places. Like, fine, you come over here, and Karnak goes over there. Instead, Vox teleports behind Black Bolt and slits his throat. And that's how the comic ends. Death of the Inhumans issue 2 has to be possibly brilliant. Well, that may be a bit too strong. I think I may be giving that a bit too much praise. A 5-issue mini, it's hard not to look at this and not think of the Man of Steel minis, relatively the same amount of issues, and I just can't. It's hard to think that this might be just like that, because Death of the Inhumans is very aware of how serious it needs to be and how it clearly understands the Inhumans, and it's not really going a horrible extra mile to sort of push drama that it's not going to live up to, hence Man of Steel. Next up is Justice League issue number 5. So Justice League issue number 5 starts off with, if you recall last time we saw, it was Lex controlling Superman and Joker controlling Martian Manhunter heading towards the totality. This was effectively the, I bet you're wondering how we got here moments. So Lex is sort of recounting how we got here. Apparently after the events of Justice League No Justice, he'd sort of been done with the idea of being a hero. He's just like, you know what, I don't get it, I don't understand it. So he took his mother box, which had been like the source of his power suit when he was quote-unquote Superman, and he creates a time machine, and he goes into the future. At least he thinks he went into the future. He might have been dreaming. He goes a million years into the future, and he's worshipped as a god. And it turns out from the locals, some of which look like Jokers, say, you know, we found your books, man, and we realized you were the real deal, man. We should have been like you. Should have been like true to ourselves, do what we want, not what's needed, and blah, blah, blah. Lex is like, this is exactly what I needed to hear, that I was right. So Lex spends a good deal of time trying to work on something else, namely, if you recall earlier on in this series, we saw Lex blow up his dad's club, and he found that doorknob. So this is apparently what led to that, while Lex was trying to figure out exactly what he wanted to do. And with that doorknob, he then found out everything else he needed. So he goes to approach Sinestro and says, hey, Sinestro, I know what you want. I know what you want. All this time, you're trying to figure out what you need. That's not going to do anything. Do what you want. Get what you want. And I can get you what you want. I can get you the invisible spectrum. And that's how Sinestro joins up. He approaches Gorilla Grodd and says, look, all the stuff you need, you tormenting people at the UN, mind controlling them to kill each other, that's not what you want. What you want is to mess with the Flash, all right? That's what you want. I can get you someone who can mess with the Flash. All right, I got the turtle, all right? The dude who taps into the still force, yeah, he's a baby now. But we need someone to control his mind. Do you know a guy like that, Grodd? Grodd's like, I'm in. And then at some point, Black Manta and Cheetah showed up, and along with the Joker, because 3 people wasn't enough. And Black Manta and Cheetah need something to do in between books, and Joker's not allowed to just be in a Batman book. He really isn't. Like, I don't think it's an official rule, but it's kind of understood that he can't just be in a book. And throughout this whole time, the totality is sort of reacting to Superman and Martian Manhunter approaching, and it's being sensed throughout the entire universe. Even Trigon is sensing it. Even Granny Goodness on Apocalypse is sensing it. Something big is happening. What if Dr. Manhattan's sensing it? Does anyone remember Dr. Manhattan in this book? Who knows? Not like this book as well. I mean, like entirely of DC. But anyway, that's ultimately how the comic ends, with us picking up with Superman, Martian Manhunter, controlled by Lex Luthor and Joker, as they approach the totality. Justice League issue 5 is, I'm not sure if we needed to know why these guys joined up, because it's sort of explained as everyone gets what they want. You know, we didn't quite explain why Black Manta and Cheetah are there, and I don't think there's any real reason for them to be there other than what I said. Someone has to fight Wonder Woman, someone has to fight Aquaman, someone has to make them invested in this. But overall, this was a really good issue, to be fair. The gentleman who wrote this, James Tynion, the fourth, who also is writing Justice League Dark, which I love going in, just by default, loved it. It was fun. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how the story actually wraps itself up. And finally, we have Batman issue 52. So if you recall, last time we left off, Batman decided to, be the jurors in 12 Angry Men and say not guilty in regards to Mr. Freeze. And he even goes so far as to make the offer like, look, let's spend an hour or two going over the evidence. And if you guys still disagree with me, I won't hold you back. I'll change my vote. And they all agree. And just like in 12 Angry Men, there's periods where the jurors talk to each other during breaks. And they all talk to Bruce about one thing or another. It's like, why? But ultimately, what matters here is the three pieces of evidence. So there's the physical evidence that that Batman found that the autopsy people didn't. There was the fact that Freeze had his armor. He wasn't supposed to have his armor. So instead of talking to Batman about, whether or not he was guilty, he decided to put his armor back on and make a new weapon. He wasn't supposed to. And then there's the confession that not only did he make to Batman, but he later made to the officers. He later made it, signed it, and everything. So, yeah, none of that matters. So all of that pretty much says, hey, Mr. Freeze is guilty. So Bruce comes up and just sort of tears that apart as best he can without sort of pointing out that, hey, I'm not Batman, but here's where Batman's wrong. And that's sort of the big thing. Like, he talks about how, why didn't the coroner see it? And he mentions that because Gordon says the guy was good, that he should have noticed the drop in temperature, but he didn't. Why did Batman notice it and not that guy? And the main argument from the jury is, well, he's Batman. He's like, that's not good enough. Okay, you can't just say he's Batman, therefore he's right. So what if something happened? What if it actually wasn't there before, and it was there when Batman checked? What if someone got to the body before Batman looked at it? Then there comes the matter of the armor and the fact that he wasn't supposed to, that he should have just talked to Batman. Bruce says, okay, let me tell you exactly how that works, okay? So in their entire history, apparently just now, Batman has never tried talking to Mr. Freeze. They've never talked. They've always just fought and fought and fought. So why would Freeze assume that this is any different than any other time? So that's why he got his armor. That's why he made a new weapon, because he was getting ready for the fight that he knew would always happen. And then came the confession, and Bruce plays hardball here. He aims for the low gut punch. He throws in the death of his parents. And he talks about how when you undergo that kind of stress, that kind of pain, that kind of torment, you'll say anything to make it stop, and you'll keep saying it. You'll keep doing it just to get away from that pain, from that fear. Apparently saying that, Batman beat Freeze up so bad that he kept saying it until he was sure that Batman couldn't hurt him anymore. And finally, the end result was sort of from like the head juror, I think, or at least our opposition, our juror number 3 to be exact. And she talks about how, you've given us no real reason, no real way of discrediting Batman, because all you have is speculation. You've given us nothing to prove, no real statement about how Batman could be wrong. There's no real case you've made against Batman that he could be wrong, that he was in the wrong, that he's made mistakes. You've implied that Batman is emotional, that he's over-invested, that he's emotionally unstable, but you've never given us any real evidence to suggest that. And Bruce is like, I got the evidence. Let me tell you. And that's how the comic ends. So Tom King, for the longest time, has sort of implied to me, he hasn't actually told me because he has no idea who I am, that he doesn't want to write a Batman story. I don't think that interests him as much. What he wants to write is a Bruce Wayne story. And to sort of give a good example of that, I want you to think about Tim Burton's Batman and Christopher Nolan's Batman. So Christopher Nolan's Batman was very focused on Bruce Wayne, where Tim Burton's Batman is very focused on Batman, then the Joker, then Penguin and Catwoman, but mostly Batman for a while. And that sort of changes how everything is focused here. Bruce here seems to be, I think, the most critical of Batman I've ever seen him in, and not just in movies, but even in the comics. I've never seen a Bruce Wayne this anti-Batman, and it can't just be the idea of his issues with Catwoman leaving him at the altar. It definitely does come from somewhere else, and I think this is something he's been building up to. The idea that with Gotham and Gotham Girl, Bruce was looking for his replacements. The idea that the war of jokes and riddles sort of tears down the fact that Batman isn't some infallible machine, but that he's just a guy that can be duped. Or even the I Am Bane storyline, and even the marriage to Catwoman was sort of the idea that Bruce Wayne needed this, not Batman. Batman Batman's greatest flaw is that he's Bruce Wayne. That's what I think is sort of being going on here. Like, ideally, Batman should make no mistakes, but Bruce Wayne is playing him. And Bruce Wayne is bringing all of his issues up to it. All of his personal demons and whatnot. It's affecting his work, I think. At least that's what I think Tom King is trying to say. Or something along those lines. Either way, this was a really good issue. I think I'd have to see how this truly plays out to really understand it. Apparently, Bruce is going to lay down the case of all of Batman's interactions with Mr. Freeze, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. Actually, I'm not kind of. I'm totally looking forward to it. Well, with that in mind, let's bring this video to a close here. If you're new to the Bucket Think Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Leave your thoughts on the books we've gone over, as well as any books you've read that you'd like to talk about, or you'd like me to talk about at some point in the future. And I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. May your fandom serve you well.